Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Women's Motorcycle Conference online. Our theme is reinvention, and we are at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I am here with Kirsten Madura. She is the founder of Engines for Change, and she is going to talk to us about Revvolutionary, using your motorcycle as a vehicle for change. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I'll get right into it. I have my screen to share, which I'll get to right now. Share screen. Is this working? Can everyone hear me? I'm gonna hope that that's a yes.
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay, great, cool. All right. So, so welcome everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming and being here today. It's great to be able to talk to you. It's an honor to be able to present at this conference along with some of the other amazing women who are here. I don't know if you were just listening to the last couple presentations, but they're just awe-inspiring, really amazing. So my name is Kirsten Madura. I run a nonprofit called, well, it's not a nonprofit yet, we're getting there, but it's an organization called Engines for Change. And Engines for Change is an organization that brings together motorcyclists to work together on volunteer activities and events and whatnot that's dedicated to a good cause, to making a positive change. So when Elisa first invited me to do this, she mentioned that the theme was reinvention. And I thought that that was pretty kind of apt for the last few years of my life and for my entrance into motorcycling. So I figured the way I would approach this presentation is talking a little bit about my story, where I come from, and then the lessons that I learned through that process. And before I get into it, I just want to say thank you guys all for joining today. A huge thank you to Elisa and the Women's Motorcycle Tours for putting on this conference. It's a really cool way to stay connected. And to the other presenters who have been here. I don't know if you were just listening to, for instance, Anne-Marie's story, but I was like in tears going, oh my God, my makeup's gonna start running and it's not gonna be great. So thank you guys for sharing your stories as well. So a little bit about my background. So I moved to New York about 4 years ago. I'm based in New York City. And it was a really kind of tough time in my life when I moved there. I just finished a contract in Nicaragua where I was working, and I thought that that was going to continue, and then it didn't. And I found myself kind of listless and roaming around both geographically and in terms of having a sense of purpose. And I ended up moving to New York for a guy, which is the first and last time I will ever do that. And it resulted in having sort of a pretty tough start here in New York. I didn't know too many people. I was struggling to find a job. I was struggling with my relationship. I was doing some remote consulting work, so I was basically at a computer in my apartment all day, every day. And it was really, really isolating. And after about 1.5 years of moving here, my ex and I broke up. And it kind of sunk in that I didn't have a place or a purpose or any sort of community around me. And I'm a pretty social person. I'm a quintessential extrovert, so that was really tough for me. And I considered going home to Portland, but I wasn't really ready to give up on New York yet. And I had actually just bought my first motorcycle, which really was an entry point into creating a place for myself in New York City. And I'm gonna just show you guys a quick video. Cam Elkins from Stories of Bike came to New York to do a DGR Writers story on me last year, and it's actually a really good sort of entry into a good explanation of where I came from. So I'm just going to show you that really quickly. Share computer sound, optimize screen share.
I stand by you when you're falling.
Can everyone hear?
When the river is calling, I said I love you forever. We can make it together.
When I first thought about moving to New York, a friend of mine told me that it takes about 2 years to really find your place in New York. And at the time, I thought, that's not going to happen for me. My whole life, I've been about finding community and finding my place. But it turns out that she was totally right. It took me 2 years to really feel any sense of home in New York. And honestly, it took motorcycling to find it.
I won't quit until it gets better, even if it takes me forever.
When I moved here, I didn't have any job prospects. I didn't really know that many people. And it was pretty isolating. And I realized that I didn't really have that community that I have valued through my entire life. The first motorcycle that I bought really was a driver where I'm like, I see a path now. I see where I can get into a community. I moved my bike into a community garage where a lot of people worked on their bikes and hung out in the garage and spent time there. I started meeting people, I started going to events, eventually I started helping to organize those events, and then started creating my own. But DGR was a buzz amongst the people that I knew in the motorcycling community. I had heard about the event, people had started to sign up for it and fundraise, and it looked like a lot of fun. It looked like a really solid, big community event. I offered my help, and from there just got sucked into it. Our team, the Moto fellas, had raised just over $10,000 collectively, which was pretty good for the first time, and the fact that I had just, emerged into this community.
Yeah, yeah.
Something that really resonated with me about DGR is the men's health issue. My cousin Patrick was one of the most artistic people I've ever met. He always kind of felt like a big brother that I never had. And I think he was a really particularly sensitive person.
What I want to say is that I stand by you when you're falling.
And we'd spend hours on the phone in the middle of the night, but he just needed someone to talk to.
Said I love you forever.
And I remember getting a voicemail, and he said, please help me, I don't want to die.
We can make it together. Hey.
When we all came together for his funeral, we were all very disturbed, saddened, kind of in shock. But I remember another one of my cousins saying, he was one of us and he died. We can't let that happen again. These issues that DGR addresses, men's health isn't just about men, it's about the communities around them. Often that's going to include women, whether it's your significant other or whether it's calling your mom on the phone or talking to your colleagues at work. It's a ripple effect. I think that one of the really great things about DGR is the fact that there are people all around the world who are working to achieve a common goal. The fact that you know that you're raising this much money for a cause, and then there's a person across the world who's doing the exact same thing. There is that sense of connection. I met all these people and got involved in all these events, and it really became the family that I had been missing. I think I found the people who I can call on whenever I need them. They'll just be there faster because they're on bikes. All right. Was everybody able to hear that? I'm gonna hope that was a yes, because yeah. All right, so as you guys could see, DGR was really my first introduction into Moto charity work. I'm just gonna double check with the chat that Okay, good. You can hear me. Cool. Just making sure. All right. So yeah, DGR was sort of my first intro into Moto charity work. In addition to meeting people through that community garage that you guys saw, I also ended up joining a few riding groups, including the MissFires, the Moto Fellows, the New York Classic Riders. But DGR was the first event that I helped organize. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a big global event that raises money and awareness around prostate cancer and men's mental health. And then every year on the same day, groups around the entire world go on a charity, like a huge charity ride in different cities around the world on the same day. It's in the last week of September, and I get a lot of questions about why are you doing something that focuses on men's health and not women's health? And for me, it's for personal reasons. My grandfather died of prostate cancer, and as you saw in the video, my cousin struggled with alcoholism for a good portion of his life and ended up passing away due to complications related to that. So for me, volunteering with DGR was really a tribute to my family members, which brings me to my first tip for people who are looking to find their own cause, which is make it personal. Find a cause that speaks to you. Look at what you already spend your time doing. Look at what resonates with you and realize that it may or may not be motorcycle specific. So these are a couple organizations that I really admire that I think are great examples of this. One is B360 down in Baltimore. The founder, Brittany Young, who's the woman pictured here, she uses dirt bikes to teach STEM to youth in the Baltimore communities who are at risk or, are having a tough life because of socioeconomic factors or, people below the poverty line. And she looked at a need in her own community and who the people around her were who needed help, and really started an organization in workforce development and education around that. But it might also not be motorcycle specific. So the Sirens MC, who are here in New York City, they partner with the New York Milk Bank to deliver breast milk to mothers who can't produce or who need supplemental milk, which, breast milk is not necessarily something that people are going to say, oh, that's a motorcycle issue. But the thing is that motorcycles can get through traffic in New York City a lot faster than, for instance, a delivery truck. So through this partnership and this collaboration, they were able to find a way to use motorcycles to have a positive impact on their local environment and communities. So at this point, kind of going back to my story a little bit, bringing it back. So I'm organizing DGR, I'm involved in a lot of community organizations, and I'm going to a lot of events. And one of the events that I was going to a lot was this one called the MotoSocial. So the MotoSocial started in 2013. It's a husband and wife team from up in Toronto who started just doing regular coffee nights, get-togethers, where motorcyclists came together and just met up and hung out in the streets and met each other and talked to each other. And it was just a really simple concept, like, let's hang out. It has grown now to the point where in Toronto, there are about 1,000 people who come every month during the riding season. And people from other cities around the world saw this and are like, oh, I really want to do that in my city. Can I start it? So the founders found these organizational teams around the world who wanted to start this for the sake of building up their community in their own local cities. And now, as you can see from these stats, it's grown to 21 cities globally. There's 64 team members. I'm one of the New York City organizing team members. You can see our picture off to the right there. And they run 107 monthly local events during the riding seasons in the respective areas. They have places, they have teams in New York, they have teams in South Africa and New Zealand, all around the US, all around Europe. And it's really amazing. And personally, I really admire the MotoSocial for a couple reasons. One reason is because it's really the purest form of community building that I personally have come across. The entire point of this organization is bringing people together and introducing them to a world and a community that they might not otherwise be a part of. And the organizers of each team have all signed up to basically be dedicated friends to any sort of newcomers. So if you're coming into a city that this exists in and you don't know anybody, our dedicated purpose is to go up and start a conversation with you and just you know, help you out and introduce you to the people that we know. And it's really just like a pure form of community building. And I love that. And Vic and Sam work really hard to keep it as that. And in the last couple of years, they started working with an organization called jack.org, which is a nonprofit that trains and empowers young people to help with mental health issues in their own peer network. And so now, over the last couple of years, they've started doing a camping event, which is basically a fundraiser for jack.org. So it's amazing. It's in August. You should definitely go if you can and check it out. It's a motorcycle camping event. And it's about building a network, building a community, and helping those in need. So that I learned a couple things from volunteering with the MotoSocial. One is just, if you're gonna start working on an event or start your own thing, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. The MotoSocial, for instance, is really just like straightforward. It's about making friends, basically. And then lesson 3 is value your people. So just as much as it is about the cause itself, whatever your chosen cause is, it's also about building up this community and, you know, valuing the people who are around you. A couple of great examples of this that I think that I really aspire to kind of grow into is, for instance, Motorcycle Missions, which is based out of Austin, Texas. This uses motorcycles to help vets and victims of domestic violence to cope with any PTSD that they have. It's run by Crystal Hess. From what I hear, I've met her a couple times briefly. She seems like a really amazing woman. Real Deal Revolution, based out of California. That one was started by, you might be familiar with Jessie Combs and Teresa Contreras. And when I met Jessie, she mentioned, you know, when she was telling me about it initially, she said that she wanted to get tools into the hands of women and teach them how to use them. So both of those are really straightforward. And I haven't personally worked with either of these organizations, but both of them are founded by really amazing women. And everybody I've spoken to who knows either of these people, you can tell it just resonates. I mean, they just glow. They really care about the people who are around them. So I think those are really important lessons if you're going to work toward any cause. Back to my story again.
Kirsten, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment.
Sure.
A lot of comments about, we're still showing the DGR slide, so I don't know what it's looking like on your end, but.
All right, let me try. Well, then we have a lot to catch up on. So. Is this working? Do you see this?
There you go.
Okay,
Beautiful.
so
Sorry to interrupt.
I appreciate it. I could have gone through this whole presentation without it. How do I get back? Sorry guys, we're just having some technical difficulties. Okay. So.
There
you can see this, right? So we're back on the DGR screen.
Yep, you're back on it now.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So rewind a little bit. Lesson 1, just go over it again, make it personal. So finding a cause that speaks to you. As I mentioned, this is Brittany Young of B360 in Baltimore, the one who uses STEM to create educational tools and workforce development within the dirt bike community in Baltimore. This is the MotoSocial. This is the organizing committee off to the right that I mentioned before. You can see some of the links at the bottom for some of these organizations, and I'm happy to share them. They're also on the Engines for Change website. This is some photos of camp. Camp was super fun. If anybody has the availability to go check it out in August up outside of Toronto in Prince Edward County, it's a really great event. They bring together, last year I think it was about 200 people, huge dining tables, you know, where you get to meet people from all around the world who have come out here. That's a slow race that our friend Melanie is taking part in. And Love Everyone is really it just encapsulates kind of the vibe, and all the proceeds go to jack.org. Lessons 2 and 3, keep it simple, value your people. This is a photo that I took of Real Deal Revolution at Babes Ride Out a couple years ago. And yeah, I think these are important lessons. And now we're here, we're all caught up. And I will certainly answer questions at the end of this about any of the things that we maybe missed earlier. So at this point in my life, I am helping to organize DGR on an annual basis. I am helping to organize the MotoSocial on a monthly basis during the riding season. I'm actively involved in a lot of motorcycle groups, and I'm frequently going to events and whatnot. And at this point, I think I was active enough in the community that people started sort of coming up to me, asking for help with some of their events. And one of the things that somebody came up and mentioned to me was that I should start a local swap meet style event. And I was a little bit skeptical about this. It was a little bit outside of my personal purview. My background's in environmental science, if I haven't mentioned that already. But I asked around a few people, and it seemed like a lot of the people in my community who had small businesses, especially, you know, around motorcycling, so gear or keychains or t-shirts or, you know, micro influencers who wanted to build up their following and whatnot, or metal work. A lot of them, you know, were stuck to doing business online, not really having any face-to-face interaction. And so it seemed from their feedback that this would be really useful for the community that I was in. So I agreed to move forward with it. I brought on, you know, a couple of friends to help organize it, and we started moving forward with it. The beginning of starting the moto market was honestly a little bit rough. I think some of us amongst the organizers had different expectations and different values and different reasons for being in it. And yeah, it took some time to kind of get onto the same page. And we had some issues, and we actually ended up having sort of like a falling out with one of the organizers because it was just so clear how off our values and the reasons that we were doing this were. So we ended up parting ways with one of the partners, which was okay. But to be honest, like I think I learned a lot from the moto market and from founding this that I would never have learned had I not sort of stepped out of my comfort zone and stepped away from, or not away from other people's organizations, but really started doing my own. It was a huge learning curve, and navigating my relationships with the organizers was an area where I was forced to step up and adult in ways that I probably wouldn't have had I not done something on my own. So that kind of brings me to my next lesson for you guys, which is, you know, when you have a vested interest in something, you need to know where your limits are. You need to know what your convictions are. And you need to know, you know, at what point do you put your foot down and say, no, this is why I'm doing it, and this is important to me. So this photo is with one of my co-founders, Shelly. She's great. We have gotten to the point now with the moto market where things run pretty smoothly. We can, you know, get it together pretty well. But, you know, Shelly and I had to work for that. You know, we worked through some, you know, issues that we had. And I think the persistence was important. And I think that the fact that we were doing this for a cause that is greater than ourselves, like we really wanted to create this space where the makers around us could come together and sell their goods and meet their customers and build their businesses that way was really important to us. So, so my lessons for you guys on that one is know your own convictions, stick to them, know what your expectations are, put your foot down when you need to, but you know, stepping outside of your comfort zone will push you to new limits that you might not have seen otherwise. Then we get to engines for change. So after we kind of got the moto market set up and running, it became really apparent to us that the motorcycle, or at least to me, that the motorcycle community is so active and they have a pack mentality. We have a pack mentality, and we want to be involved, and we are there, and we are willing, and we are capable. And I really wanted to take those values, take those talents, and put them towards something that I felt really could make a difference in the world. As I mentioned, you know, a second ago, my background's in environmental science, and I really was going through all of the things that I had mentioned earlier, all the lessons. So find something that you're really passionate about, that resonates with you, keep it simple, know your expectations. And what I came up with was a beach cleanup. The International Coastal Cleanup Day happens every year in September. And I decided that I wanted to bring my motorcyclists together and clean up our local community. I think it's a really admirable cause. It's, you know, science-based, which is where my background lies. And I wanted to tap into the skills and the energy that the motorcyclists around me had. So this was great. So we did a beach cleanup last September for International Coastal Cleanup Day. We ended up partnering with another organization, NYCH2O, because they coincidentally organized a beach cleanup on the same day. So we said, hey, why not join forces? We had about 150 volunteers, about 30 to 40 of whom were motorcyclists. We collected 101 bags of trash that weighed around 700 pounds and about 33 bags of recycling that weighed 370 pounds. We also had people, I had people from California and Toronto and the Midwest and all around reach out to me and say, hey, we'd really like to do beach cleanups and local community cleanups in our own areas. So the plan is that when all of this quarantine is over, since obviously all this got sidetracked, we want to try to do it at least annually with cities and groups around the country and really train organizers in how to do a beach cleanup properly and the considerations that you have to have, and be an organization that helps people to enact these changes in their own local areas. So if you're interested in being part of this and helping with beach cleanup in your own area, I'm not sure where everybody is right now, but just hit me up. Happy to include you on that. And so we have, some projects that we're trying to move forward with, obviously the beach cleanups, but also projects in women's empowerment, motorcycle advocacy. That's a huge thing here in New York that I'm not sure if people face to the same extent in other areas with, issues with law enforcement and potholes and traffic and taxis trying to kill you and whatnot. So we're trying to build up around that as well. And a few other projects that, to be honest, have been totally sidetracked from the, shelter in home and the pandemic, understandably. But we're adaptable. So our current focus right now is actually doing what we can to be involved in the COVID relief efforts. So we are working with a whole slew of organizations, some of which are listed here, in delivery and logistics. So we're basically delivering PPE to medical professionals who need them. We're delivering groceries to senior citizens who need them. We're open to doing pharmacy runs. We haven't done any of them yet. This particular photo, this woman here is Molly Mosier. She is the VP of the Sirens, who I mentioned earlier, who work with the milk bank, and she organized a whole big run of groceries to senior citizens who couldn't pick them up at the food bank that they usually go to on the weekends. So a bunch of us got together and, staying 6 feet apart, collected, the groceries, not all on motorcycles. Some of them were on motorcycles because that's the mode of transportation that they have, but we were in a car. We had a sidecar going where we had a bunch of bags in a sidecar. And so we've been really trying to help where we can, which brings me to lesson 5, which is pay attention. Pay attention to what's happening around you. Pay attention to what people in the communities around you really need, and get involved in the ways that are needed. Just listen to what people are saying around you. So, summary of our lessons learned. So these are kind of the big takeaways that I've taken from my last few years really getting heavily involved in the motorcycling community. So make it personal, something that speaks to you. Don't overcomplicate it, make sure you know what you're going after, and that's all you need to do. Value your people, the people around you, stay true to your own convictions, and listen to what people have to say and what they need. That's me looking very cocky at the first DGR, but I like the suspenders, so I'm okay with it. And then I put together this slide. So this is a bunch of the organizations that I already mentioned, plus a couple at the bottom that I haven't mentioned yet. But I wanted to put this slide together so that people could see the diversity of ways in which you can use motorcycles for positive change. Anne Marie just spoke about hers, that she started as a tribute to her brother, and, you know, to help in the community that she's been involved in. Spoke a lot about her affinity for animals as well. And, you know, if you're somebody who loves animals, maybe there's a way to work with an adoption shelter or to deliver pet supplies during COVID. You know, there are always ways to get involved, and it's a matter of being creative and looking at what resources you have and looking at what needs there are. A couple of these organizations that I haven't mentioned yet that I really want to call out: Rally for Rangers is awesome. They deliver dirt bikes out to park rangers in like Patagonia and Mongolia and places around the world, so that the rangers can track down poachers, and you can raise a ton of money. I know they're working on finishing a documentary film right now that you can donate to, or you can raise money and you can actually go on the rides and deliver the dirt bikes yourself. And then there's also Riders for Health International, which delivers, I think it's mostly AIDS medication, but don't quote me on that, but they deliver medication to rural clinics in Africa, like all around Africa, different countries where they couldn't access that medication otherwise. So, you know, all of these people who have founded these organizations have seen a need in the causes that they care about, and they've taken action to do that. So if you're trying to find your cause, I just put together a few questions that you can ask to figure out what it is that really speaks to you that you want to get involved in. So what do you enjoy doing with your spare time? What are you good at? You know, what do you find yourself doing when you have an hour? Like, do you go look at puppy videos or something? Or do you go look at travel videos? Or do you look into dirt bikes? You know, where is your cause? What resonates with you? What issues need to be addressed within that area? How can motorcycles be used to solve those issues? And a huge one that I will recommend is there already an organization out there that you can work with? It's really hard starting your own thing, and it's easy to be daunted, and it gets overwhelming, and it takes a lot of time. And if there's already an organization out there that you can collaborate with, it's going to make your life so much easier. If you want to help with Engines for Change, let me know. I'm totally open to it. But if you still need ideas, I am definitely down to help. I like keeping track of all these different organizations that are using motorcycles for positive changes. So you can see that link at the bottom. You can fill that out and get in touch with me, and I will try to connect you where I can. And yeah, I hope you guys stay in touch. I hope that you have gotten something out of this in sort of finding what resonates with you and where you want to go with it. And
You're so awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
If you will stop the screen share so people can see your lovely face up large.
Yes.
Yay, thank you. We have some questions for you. And the first one is that Helene is asking, do you mostly commute? What kind of riding do you do? How many miles a year?
So I work from home, so I don't really have any commuting. I do a lot of recreational street riding, especially with my core group of friends here in New York City. I've done a little bit of adventure riding. I went to Colombia last year with my boyfriend, which was amazing. Would highly recommend. Reach out to Gustavo Pasquale if you ever go to Colombia. I do some dirt biking. I'm still at kind of my early stages. I do have a dirt bike. I have done a bit of it. I'm not very good at it. So I think my friend Cass is on here, and we are definitely going to go dirt biking as soon as all of this COVID has subsided a little bit. Yeah, I've done some track riding. So I've done everything. I've run the gamut, but at like little pieces here and there.
Cool, thanks. The next question I have is from anonymous attendee, which is awesome, by the way, folks. If you want to ask a question and you don't want to have your name in there, you can just use the anonymous feature. So they want to know if they can get a comprehensive list of all of the great organizations that you're mentioning.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. I have considered putting it on the website, and this will now be my impetus to do so.
Okay,
I will also say that on the website, there's a page that's dedicated to COVID relief sources. So if you go there, you can see a bunch of organizations that are working to get PPE to people and, you know, helping out in that sense. So I kept getting a bunch of questions for that. So that's all on the website also.
Okay, great. You want to tell us what the website URL is?
Yes, it is www.enginesforchange.org. That is engines plural. So.
Okay, enginesforchange.org.
Yes.
Awesome.
I mean, .com will also get you there. I have both those domain names. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Still asked, is there a MotoSocial?
Oh yeah. So there are many MotoSocials depending on what city you're in.
Okay.
As I mentioned, it started in Toronto. They have MotoSocials all over Canada. There are teams, a lot of teams in the US, and it's in South Africa and in New Zealand and in Europe. So you can reach out to the MotoSocial guys directly through their website. It's Vic and Sam, they're great people. And if there's not a MotoSocial in your city, and if you're interested in starting one, then they're always open to exploring new cities too.
So cool.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, it's really cool. Sherry wants to know if the DGR is a men's only event.
No, definitely not. So it is dedicated toward men's health, but one of the things that I've kind of been working with the Movember Foundation on and DGR on in the last, especially the last year, but the last couple of years is really embracing the women in the community, because as I mentioned in my video, men's health issues don't just affect men. They affect the daughters and the wives and the sisters and the friends and the coworkers, and all that affect women so much. So women are definitely welcome. It definitely errs toward men. Like if you're participating in a DGR ride, there are a lot of guys there. I will warn you that. But it's very much about like women as well, and women are definitely welcome.
Fantastic, thanks. Do you know how COVID-19 is affecting all of the events you mentioned, and what have you heard so far?
Yeah, so I know the MotoSocials are on hold right now. Usually they start in May. Obviously that's not going to happen. I know that they are affecting my personal, the moto markets are everything's on hold basically until we have more information. So except for obviously the COVID relief efforts, which we're also trying to expand to LA. So if you're in LA and you want to help deliver stuff, we're starting that as well. So. Okay.
And how do they contact you about that?
You can get in touch with me through the website. You can email enginesforchange@gmail.com. You can email me personally, kirsten.madura@gmail.com.
Okay, great. And all of your social links are on our presenters page. We took great care to put everyone's social media handles there. So folks, you can also find her there. Anonymous says, everything you do is just amazing. How do you do? Yeah, own that, right? How do you do so much without getting burned out?
I did get burned out. So I got burned out back in 2013, 2014, which is actually why I went to Nicaragua in the first place. I got a grant to go, or I was managing a grant. I got a fellowship to go down there, and that was kind of my initial escape. I was working really hard. It was a difficult place to live in, but I just needed a total change. Happy to tell you that story in a different presentation, but I was down there installing solar panels and green gray water gardens and other sustainability projects in rural communities. And so that was kind of my reset. And then when I moved to New York, alongside the motorcycling, I also got into film and photo a bit more. So I was working in the film industry and the photo industry. And that was just such a creative, right-brained endeavor and so task-oriented, as opposed to, before that I worked corporate. So, I also have one of those, I escaped from corporate, running away screaming kind of situations. And so turning to motorcycling and turning to film and photography actually was my way of escaping and trying something totally new. So if you're getting burnout, try something new, like just shift directions entirely, but keep your momentum is my suggestion.
Good advice. Yeah. Carmela wants to know, how did you connect with people, neighbors, hospitals in order to deliver things during COVID crisis? Yeah,
so at least in New York, the positive thing is that the organizations that we are working with already have those connections set up. So they already had, for instance, I think the first one that I got in touch with was Ralph Lauren sewists. So the people who are like tailors on Ralph Lauren fashion sets and whatnot, they're all obviously at home and they're all hand tailoring homemade masks. And then they're connecting with hospitals and they're like, cool, we have all these people at home, these professional tailors making these masks. We have these hospitals, but the real question for them is, how do we get these materials to and from wherever they need to go? So the organizations that we're partnering with already have the connections and we're just the couriers. We're the ones going from point A to point B. So that kind of goes back to my message before where it's like, if you can collaborate with people who are already doing things, but you see where those gaps are that motorcycles can maybe fit in, then you're already 10 steps ahead. So
yeah, the combined effort really gets you
exactly
a lot further.
Oh, yeah.
And we see that in the motorcycle industry too. We see a lot of fragmented, efforts, and it makes sense to join with people who already have the expertise. They already have the groundwork and stuff. But it's also good to follow your dreams. So I'm not advocating either way. Join together and do your own.
Right. But I mean, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So you can, if you're collaborating, you can either join right into whatever they're doing, or you can enhance it in some way. And that can be, your dream. So
yeah, awesome point.
Yeah.
Robin is asking, what are your top 1 to 2 tips for fundraising, getting sponsors, etc.?
That one is tough because I suck at fundraising. I would say it's always easier to start with your personal network. At least that's how I've always started. Especially in the motorcycling community, people are so giving, and they might have the connections that you need. And if you don't ask, then people aren't going to tell you. So start by asking the people that you know. And I would also say get organized. So I've been working on pitches for a few projects, and to be able to just hand somebody a pitch and you're like, here are all the questions that you're going to ask me. Here you go. That will make life so much easier if you just, have that already thought through, you have it planned out, you have something that's visually appealing that you can just hand someone and say, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you know anyone who can help me on the financial side? If you're looking at, one thing that I'm looking at right now for Engines for Change actually is fiscal sponsorship, so that I don't have to go and get 501c3 status on my own. You can actually borrow 501c3 status from a fiscal sponsor. That's like the purpose of fiscal sponsorship. So that is something that I'm learning more about, and I would recommend other people looking into if you're looking at starting like a nonprofit of some sort. Oh, I lost your voice.
No, I muted myself. I had a little bit of I had some background noise here. Helene wants to know whether you know Donna Skinner.
I don't. The name sounds familiar, but I don't think so. Should I? Please connect me. I love meeting people. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm writing that down. Thank you, Helene.
Okay, Lisa, I see your question, but I think she just answered it. So I'm going to move on. Anne Marie says she loved your passion.
Thank you. Oh, I love yours. Oh my God. Yeah.
Sharp Rider in Toronto, Canada, says Helene. Sharp Rider in Toronto, Canada.
Sharp Rider?
Not sure. Helene, will you post another question down there so I can, so we can understand that? Thanks. Marika says that it sucks that COVID ruined tomorrow's Dirty Girls class too.
No, I know. That's Marika was, it's for, hi. Yeah. Marika was organizing an all women's dirt bike class with a bunch of us, and she was working with Cass, who I mentioned earlier, to set that up. And yeah, hopefully we can do it either in like June or September. We'll see.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Hannah wants to know, she says that you mentioned that there are riders in LA that can help with the COVID relief. And do you know if there are any opportunities for riders in the San Francisco Bay Area to help?
So, okay, so one of my main goals for Engines for Change is to facilitate other people to lead these kinds of efforts in their own communities. So if you are interested in leading any kind of these efforts in your own area in San Francisco, in LA, Toronto, wherever you want to go, reach out to me, and I am happy to put together infrastructure and materials and as many connections as I personally can to make that happen. So if something's not already happening where you are, reach out to me. Like, that's the whole reason why I started this organization, was to help other motorcyclists to do this in their own communities. So hit me up. Let's do it.
Okay, great. Petey says, please give a presentation on that, how to escape government.
What part? It seems.
That's what I got for you. Still
Also reach out, let's talk.
Okay. Still says that DGR seems to involve a bit of dress-up costuming. She's always ridden ATGAT, which is all the gear all the time, for anyone who doesn't know that term. And she has concern about that. Has anyone else voiced that concern?
Yes, it gets talked about every year. So DGR is definitely all about being at the event itself, like on the day, the ride is all about dressing up in your Sunday finest and going on this ride. And people definitely take liberties with their gear on these days. But I will say that you don't have to dress up. That's a personal choice that everybody makes. So you can show up in full gear and ride however you feel comfortable. And you can still, wear like a nice shirt or, nice armored black pants or, something like that. There are ways around it. Nobody's going to turn you away if you're not wearing like a dress, or, not a dress, but you can wear a dress.
Okay.
I actually almost did last year, but yeah, the ACAT thing kind of got me on that. You can still participate, but yes, that is definitely a concern.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes, so I just want to give you one comment. PD says, I can help you with 501c3. It's not hard, and she wants everyone to know that. So you two definitely should connect on that.
Yes, please.
Helene clarified, Donna is the chief instructor and great animator for Sharp Rider.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And Frank had an interesting question. Frank's been one of my mentors in the motorcycle industry for many years, and he has an excellent question. Do you use motorcycle dealerships to become advocates of your cause?
Not yet. I have some relationships with local motorcycle dealerships, but full disclosure, Engines for Change as a formal organization only started in September. So I'm still working on getting training materials together and still working on getting the infrastructure together, obviously getting things like 501c3 status sorted out. So this is still at the fairly early days. I've been involved in motorcycle charity for the last few years, but this is the sort of first endeavor to kind of bring all of my passions and my community engagement into one organized structure. So that is, things like sponsorships or, communication with dealerships and brands will come down the line, but I'm also kind of an advocate for having done the work before I ask for support for the work. So I also want to get a little bit more of the efforts underway and under my belt before I start asking people to support it more.
And I also know you personally, so I also know you're in a professional group that can help you a lot, the Women in Power Sports group.
Yes.
So just 2 more things for everyone. Rose says, in the San Francisco Bay Area, look up Dames Do Care on Facebook. They are delivering PPE all over the Bay Area. Thanks for that, Rose. That's really great.
Yes,
I wanted everybody
excellent.
to hear that. And Mark says, you're just amazing the way you're involved with all this passion. You're very inspiring, all of what you are doing. It's just going to go really far. Your mind is very clear and it's easy to know what you want. Good job. So
Thank you so
wanted to
much.
give you that feedback, and I want to thank you. Sorry, we've got a couple more questions and comments, but we don't have time for that. I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing Engines for Change and what you do. I applaud you, applaud your passion, and
Yeah.
let us
Thank
know
you
how
so
we can
much
help.
for, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. This whole conference is amazing. So,
Yeah.
so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's the Awesome Club, and you're
Yeah.
okay, thanks everyone. Up next is our makers panel at that's going to be 6 p.m. Roll up your sleeves. The makers are professional women in the motorcycle industry who are making stuff, and it should be an interesting conversation moderated by Joanne Dawn, gearchick.com. Okay, see you in 10 minutes. Enjoy your break.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.